Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about the Schengen visa and essentially how you can get this visa which lets you go to a conference or for tourism in a large number of European countries. So essentially if you plan to go to a conference in Europe, you will have to apply for the Schengen visa, and let's begin in some of the cases which you may encounter. So essentially you have to apply to the consulate or embassy of the country where you're planning to go. Now if you are planning to go to only one country, let us say France, this situation is very simple. You essentially have to apply to the French embassy, or if you are in a large country which has some consulates also, you have to apply to the French consulate nearest to your hometown or which essentially has jurisdiction over your hometown. So you need to check this out from the embassy web page in your home country. Now if you are planning to go to several countries, and this is often the case when people travel in Europe, then what you should do is you should go to the consulate where you are going to spend the most amount of time. So in case you are going to spend the most amount of time in Germany in your European trip, you should go to the consulate for Germany. Now the third possible case is if you are going to all the countries and these countries essentially need the same amount of time. So it could be a situation where in each country you will spend essentially 3 days. So in this case you should essentially go to the first country you are landing into. So maybe you're planning to go to France, Netherlands, Germany, and then come back to your home country, and each of these visits is for a period of 4 days. So essentially, since France is the first country you're planning to enter, you need to get the Schengen visa through France. So that is the thing to keep in mind. Now essentially you want to give this process a lot of time. So the rule is that you can apply 15 days to 6 months before your trip. So go for the larger time frame. You can at least apply 4 to 5 months before, and this will give you a lot of time for all the paperwork which may be required. Sometimes things go into processing, background checks, and so on. So these things can take time. So give these guys a lot of time, especially if you are applying around the vacation season in August. So that's a time when many people are not there in France. Now let's look at the documents which you need to produce for the Schengen visa. Of course, you have to fill up the application for the visa on the web page. You have to submit your pictures in Schengen visa formats. You have to have a valid passport which should be valid for 3 months before you leave. Now if you have any older passports with visa in them, bring them also, because that's always going to be useful for any visa application. Remember that if you have obtained any visa before, that's a very positive sign, because essentially what this means is that you obtained the visa, you visited that country, and you came back. You did not essentially disappear into that country or something like that. So essentially the consular people like to see that. Now some more things which you need here are a round trip ticket confirmation. So essentially you need to give the dates, the flight numbers, all the bookings and so on, and the entry and exit into the Schengen region. Now there are many travel agents or even internet sites which will let you book a fare and they do not charge money for it. So try to find some of these sites, because in case your visa gets rejected, you don't want to book one of those non-refundable flights and then lose all the money. So keep that in mind, that you either want to get a refundable ticket or you want to talk to one of these travel agents who are able to book for you without taking a payment, and then when your visa comes through, they can essentially take your payment and confirm the ticket. So that's something which is very important. Now the next thing you need is a travel insurance policy, and this should cover a minimum of 30,000 euro for medical. And in fact the more the better, because do remember that if you get any health problems in a foreign country during your travel, this can have a lot of deleterious consequences. So I do know some people who ended up getting leg broken or something like that, and then they had to be hospitalized. So these things are always useful to have some kind of insurance coverage whenever you are traveling abroad. Now the next thing you need to do is you need to book your stay in a hotel or in a hostel or in a dorm, as the case may be. And if you are staying for a longer period of time, like if you are going for a postdoc or a sabbatical visit, you need to have the rental agreement essentially from the guest house. So these printed copies are very useful. Now if you are going to a university, you need a letter of invitation from a host. Sometime you may be visiting some friend or colleague and you may be staying at their house. Then again, these people should write a letter inviting you and specify that you are going to stay in their house. So this is even the case if you are visiting relatives, for example, your brother or sister or son or daughter live in any of the Schengen countries. Then these kind of letters are always useful, because this is something you can show to the consulate people. Also, when you land in that country, you can show that letter to the officer who is there at the immigration counter. Now beside this, you may need proof of financial need, especially if you are going for a conference. So in that case, you need to give your bank statement for the last 6 months and they should be signed. So I personally had an experience on this, that I took a photocopy and then they told me to get a signature and stamp for the bank, and this was for a France Schengen visa. So things may have changed, but keep in mind to follow the exact description they have given. You need to give your pay slips for the last 6 months, your income tax returns for the last 3 years, and any kind of sponsorship letter if you have one, because this is the strongest situation. If you have a letter from a university or from some place which is sponsoring your visit, then that of course comes across very well. Finally, you need to pay the visa fee. So this is of course not refundable. You pay the visa fee, and whatever the outcome, you will essentially have to lose this visa fee. So an interesting thing I read somewhere is that millions of euros worth of visa fee are actually lost by people because they do not get the Schengen visa. That's something to keep in mind. Now let us look at the countries with the best possibility of getting Schengen visa, and these are the countries with the lowest rejection rates. So these are essentially Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Iceland. So keep these countries in mind if you are planning to enter the Schengen region. So one of the strategies of course is to enter through one of these regions, and this could be as a tourist or it could be in a conference targeted to these regions, and then go to some different regions also. And the countries which have the maximum rejection rate are Malta, Sweden, Belgium, and France. So keep that in mind, that France has a high rejection rate, so you can plan for some of these things. And do remember that if you have obtained a Schengen visa, it becomes very easy to get the next Schengen visa. So if you are entering the Schengen territories first, you may look at some of these countries with the low rejection rate, such as I mentioned before. Also Germany has a low rejection rate, so you can consider Germany also. And once you have a Schengen visa from Germany, for example, you can plan your next trip to one of the more strict countries such as France or Sweden. And in that case, when the officer sees your previous Schengen visa and the fact that you have come and gone, he or she is likely to actually be more lenient in giving you the Schengen region visa. So that's something to keep in mind. One more interesting fact is that if you have ever obtained a US B1 B2 visa, which is the US visitor visa, then I find that the Schengen countries are very much impressed by that, and they are very quick to issue your visa. So one thing I would of course tell all people who are graduate students or scholars is that do not postpone these visa travels and decisions very long. You should always get a visa for some travel and then come back. And then what this does is it makes the process of getting your next visa much simpler. So essentially, just like writing your first paper or writing your first book, it's always very difficult to get the visa the first time. But once you have got the visa for first time, you have gone and come back to your home country, generally it becomes much simpler to get any future visa. So The first visa which you get, you can target one of these countries where it is very easy to get visa, for example Finland, Latvia or Lithuania, and then later it will be more easy for you to get visa to the more difficult countries such as France, Belgium or Sweden, as the case may be. So this was my take on the Schengen region. Many people have difficulties getting the B1, B2 visa to visit US conferences because of the 221G requirement, and so what happens is that they get the proverbial pink slip and they spend a lot of time, and they can sometimes lose a lot of money because of the delays which happen because of the 221G. So you can to a large extent avoid this problem by planning for conferences in the European Schengen region and getting a Schengen visa. I've also made a video on multiple entry Schengen visas which are very useful, so you can take a look at that for more information, because getting a multiple entry visa means that you can come and go, and so you save an enormous amount of money in terms of visa fee, and you also have time to plan for optimal travel in terms of your plane flight booking, hotel booking and so on if you have a multiple entry visa. So that was my take today on the Schengen visa. I hope this video is useful to you, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.